doesn't it? So that means they were knowingly defrauding the people, haven't they been?
Right.
So when people become active, what does it do? It forces their hand and exposes them, and therefore they have to justify what they have been doing, distinguished from what they have not been doing. And in the process, it also exposes the opportunists that have been among our own too, doesn't it?
Right.
Well, that's why we're having this conversation.
But I'll be happy, this was sent to me. It needs a little cleaning up, just grammatically, but definitely would make it available. And I think, thank Brother Truth for that document. And but I just need to clean it up just a little bit grammatically. But it's based on established
law, which means that's the law.
There's the law.
See, so if it's not that, it's not the law, is it?
True.
So we've been living under a lawless regime, thinking that they were government, haven't we?
Yes.
And we've been paying taxes to them mandatory under the guise of voluntary, haven't we? Which is absolute contradiction, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So we have been operating or serving a criminal organization of parasitic exploiters, thinking they were legitimate government. But the people believed in them, didn't they? Mm-hmm. This is why a lot of the processes or things that I've been saying over the years I've done or said or produced. But I also told the people, and I always qualified it by saying some of the things we're doing now will not be doing later. Why? Those were chess moves. To force the hand, to cause them to expose themselves. Because remember, when you lose faith in them, they lose their power because they are parasites and vampires. And they can't live without blood sucking you. Whether it is physical, which they do, or abstract, which they do.
Here's another question from Jason Meady. How much power do Freemasons have over the nation?
You must understand that Freemasons as a fraternal club is an abstract of them studying you and studying your culture. However, Masonry is cosmology, astrology. It is African culture, or sometimes referred to as Moorish science. They have been using the negative, or what you call the lower self energies. So it's like the point of comprehending, what sometimes when you hear us say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but get some comprehension of what you're dealing with so that you can make discernment. Because remember, one of the things that they have practiced doing is impersonating or doing things in other people's names. So understand, while they may use Masonry to cover up their frauds, etc., in divine order, Masonry simply means mother's son. And all you sons out there that got a belly button, you were born a Mason. However, doesn't mean you're dark side. So you must know the distinction between the higher self and the lower self, pardon me, and aspire to those positive principles of both justice and jurisprudence, which we have not been doing because we've been operating under the black codes. That's the dark side. So by your will and intent, you must drive or direct or navigate your life with what they will call the carpenter's tools, sometimes referred to as the compass for radius and the square for conduct. That's what that's about, you all. It's also referred to as isonomy. So don't learn to hate yourself because hybrid Europeans have misrepresented African, or what they refer to as Egyptian culture.
And the thing that I've learned about, and I was listening to the sister yesterday, and we were listening today about that one, what you need to really look into when you're looking at who they are and what they've been doing are, believe it or not, the archons. Remember that sort of like the what's behind the shadow,
the dark side.
Yeah. But it's they're not us.
My position has always been to not try to make things complex, but
Right.
to deal with what's right before you.
Right.
You know how, like I say, like you say, you know, and I know that there's many metaphysical conversations that we can go into. For instance, like how many craters are on the moon, as an example, the dark side of the moon, the hollow moon. Whenever you're looking at what you call the moon, you're always seeing just one side of it. It doesn't appear to rotate like the Earth, or etc., as they might say, or it's just a light that appears to be the same size as the sun, the visible sun, as you call it.
Sort of like a casting.
Yes. All right. However, my position has always been, before you can talk about mapping the moon, let's talk about mapping Midgard. Meaning that, how dare you claim the knowledge of a God that you do not see when you do not acknowledge your brothers and sisters by the day? Or how can you claim to love a God that you do not see when you don't love the brothers and sisters you see by the day? Thus, in the principle of common sense, common law goes aligned with that in natural law. How can you claim, i.e., to know the laws of the universe or the laws of God, when you don't even know the laws of men, among whom you were given birth?
I get that, but there are a lot.
That's where you get the derivative statement, ignorance of the law is no excuse, because it's based in the knowledge of yourself and the honor of your mothers and your fathers.
I get that, Grand Sheik, but there are, believe it or not, there are many who are aware of a darker other side. They need to, and those who do need to know how they can use their knowledge and energy,
yes,
to begin to push back and to thwart what's happening.
And I'm agreeing with that, absolutely. And I'm adding to that, much of the approach I've used and have been intending to use is to help get the hybrids off, those vampires off their back, so they're better able to use their common sense and accelerate or ascend into the higher planes of knowledge elsewhere. It's sort of like, let's work on, while we're ascending in our knowledge about the outer world, etc., that we are cognate of conquering the inner world. Don't neglect the one for the other. That's what I'm saying.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It needs to be balanced.
Yes. There we go.
Because you got people at all ends of the spectrum when it comes to this knowing.
Now let's look at this, and I'll give you another example of my reasoning. Look how much economic energy is lost from our communities by taxation alone, by virtue of this misrepresentation that is absolutely in place, and this false taxation that's absolutely in place. Would it not be true? Would it not be true that and I'll show you another point. You know how you'll see a lot of people will attack and criticize me for exposing the truth about property being held in a allodial title prior to 1913, and that these mortgages and liens did not arrive into the political avenues of estate and property at North America until 1913. You notice that coincides with 1913 when Noble Drawley, our prophet, established officially the old Canaanite temple for the redemption of a lost estate. And a lot of people, when you say allodial title, you'll see them getting mad or upset. Why are they upset? Why don't they just tell the truth? What is their motive? What is their motive of going against the truth?
Are we talking about Moors?
Yes. Why are they upset?
Yeah, why would they?
It's not an opinion, that's a fact. Why are they upset? Because once the people get conscious, they'll recognize that they should be on the issue of getting rid of the false de facto venues of artificial debt created by unum sanctum operations, which is the debt pledge mortgages that they've been burdened with. I'm interested in getting those types of things off the people's back while they're ascending in other areas or worrying about what's on the dark side of the moon, if you get the point. You want to go there, you better get some of this weight off your back here.
Here's a question from Eric Ratliff. Grand Sheik, are there any governments on the face of this earth still in alignment with Moorish science fighting for the people?
Very few. What you have might be surprising to you. Maybe a small faction of people operating in Manchuria, a small faction of people operating in Russia, a small faction of people operating in Afghanistan who just threw them out, a small faction of the Phoenician tribes here in the Western Hemisphere, tagged as quote unquote Indians. Outside of that, very few others. Most of the constructed governments are actually Satanists. Now that's a fact.
Well, you can tell that they're connected because all of them have followed the same mandates from here to all these.
One of the things I want you to notice that as I read to you some of these fundamental principles, you'll see that while these are the established principles, you'll see that they haven't been operating on those principles. That's what I wanted you to take note of. And the fact that the average people are not familiar with what I just shared with you tonight demonstrates that what the obligations are and what they have actually been violating. Because the point of it is you should be very familiar with this stuff if that's what we've been living under. But the fact that we have not been living under it demonstrates that they are criminal and de facto. That was my point of sharing this information. Because you need to recognize that people who are in position of government don't have rights to sell you or to grant you or to give you or to license you by. They only have obligations and duties. Keep that in mind. All of which they've been abridging. They've been trespassing your estates and your birthrights since their existence. Most governments are criminals from the beginning, from their construction. So your blind faith in them has been giving them energy. So you decide what you want to do with this information. Because every man, woman, and child must confess their own worship under their own vine and fig tree. Don't look for us to carry your cross, because that's not going to happen. The Savior will be in you. It's not coming from outside. We're just sharing some information to help us all to get in a more proper state of mind in governing our affairs and our interchanges in trade with each other. For those principles are established anciently.
Here's a question. What are we to do if the de facto government does not respond to motions, notice, demands with quo warranto?
This is why they set up the civil rules of procedure in order to stagnate you. This is what I'm presenting to you. That's why I told you. The civil rules of procedure was designed by them to actually do their corruption with you in the name of stagnating you or denying you justice. Because fundamental constitutional principles are very simple. And all this complication that they have made in the processes, i.e. the procedures, was designed to deny you due process. In fact, while they pretend that that's the way the law goes, no. Those are the operations of their private and foreign human chattel property operations. They are not courts. There have been no courts of justice, as we told you years ago, operating at North America since roughly around 1789. That's a fact.
But specifically, I mean, are there any steps? Is there any remedy to that? I mean,
the remedies is your activities. Number one, claiming your nationality, getting out of the black codes, cleaning up your status, and then studying the principles of your ancient mothers and fathers and standing pat and square on those principles while relating to others, i.e. being more cognizant of your obligations to act within the virtues of your higher self and not the lower self upon which they feed. They feed on fear and ignorance, which is what they promote, which is why they're upset whenever you mention words like divine sovereignty, constitutions, etc., i.e., those principles. Because once you start thinking in those directions, you start gravitating to a cognizance of the higher self and the relationships of proper government or de jure government, and you would recognize that they are frauds and start rejecting them. Because remember, they are vampires. They live on blind faith, which is why they promote blind faith in both government and dogma under the guise of religion. Because those are tools. They are mind control tools. Keep that in mind. That's a fact. Get used to accepting the fact. You don't want to accept that, then you'll stay in the darkness with them.
So Mercian Freeman asked, what's the jurisdiction we can use to get free access to federal court?
The platforms operating as they are not courts of justice. You will not get it with them. You will get it with yourselves, which is why for years we've always promoted the Moors to activate the principles of Article 3 courts and the courts of diversity of nationality, which is a consular venue, so that you can start qualifying yourselves of reactivating the established law, while those persons who are impersonating government continue their criminality against the people. You must do it. You're the cure.
And so Ram
this is why certain things we've been promoting or teaching. These are chess moves.
Says so only consular courts can enforce our law?
Consular court, because remember the issue is the court is courts of justice. In the issues or in the matters of controversy in diversity, consular court is activated. Consular court does not sit in what you call established structure on its own right. You have courts of justice. The venue would change. And so whenever there's a controversy in diversity, then it becomes consular court. Therefore, you'll be jurisprudence. Your jurisprudence will be in a consular venue that deals with diversity of nationality, i.e. treaty enforcement. And this is why they don't talk in those areas, because they know they've been abridging and violating you on all of those fronts. This is again why they have been promoting their so-called black leader guys as civil rights 14th Amendment promoters and trying to get you to agree to be a U.S. citizen Negro, which makes you their stock. This is why many of them have been over the years really upset with Taji Guy for exposing these fundamentals, because once you recognize that, you'll recognize that these people who you have trusted have handlers behind them, and they're not your friends.
Chub Jack says, yes, but how were we conquered? How?
We were conquered by ourselves in many ways, going away from the principles of our ancient mothers and fathers. One of the things that Prophet Noble Ali always told the Moors in relationship to our fall, were our preoccupation with gratifying our lower selves. Don't act like you've been innocent, because you haven't. See, because the principles of divine law don't recognize personal station. So keep that in mind too. So if we go back to those principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, we will begin to be part of the cure and less a part of the problem. We'll be part of what you call cause and less part of effect. I.e. is called solutions, remedy, responsibility, honor, integrity. Yes, it's not hard. It's just that we must go back to those principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, and we ourselves will start fixing things and get rid of the corruptors around us and the opportunist parasites around us.
So Tamaray Elder,
we got to stop playing. We got to stop playing in the innocent victim game, because that's not totally true. We've been exploited, but we ain't innocent. Get over it. Get your ego out of it.
Tamariel Bay says, wants you to shed light on that time in history when they were rewriting history and substituting the word Moorish with the false identity of Indian.
It has that. The Indian thing is around 1820 area. And keep in mind, the Indian, there's no such thing in the nature of Indian. So let's get this clear. Let's get this clear from the beginning. So when they're making reference to the Indians of the West, they're talking about the Naga, i.e. the Moors, i.e. and or Dravids. And so when you're talking from their perspective of the reconstructed history, they would imply Sindh, or what you would know for a couple thousand years, Hindustan, i.e. and the Naga, Druids, Dravidians, among the Phoenicians that come to the Western Hemisphere with the Canaanites, Moabites, i.e. seeking new homes, which you will see some of that history demonstrated in the Circle 7 Quran, chapter 47. And the term Hindus or Hindus, and keep in mind they don't pronounce the H for Hindustan, they would say Indi, referring to the Moors of the Carib Moors among the Arawak and Taino Moors of the islands area of the Caribbean. And they started calling us Hindus or Naga of the East, of the West. And so this is where it is derived the term West Indies. And then they promoted the word Indies or Indians. And then the practice spread to the north. And so they would refer to the Moors of the Western Hemisphere as Indians. However, no such word exists. They made it up.
And some of them admit that it's a fiction. If you,
it's been adopted as a political social reality. However, it's a false matrix.
It was no different than black and white.
Absolutely. It's just that it's been given what you call political legitimacy
to
make the people think that, oh, if you claim to be Indian, we'll take you within the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which we established to recognize your sovereignty. Yeah. You notice that they have a lot of boxing and a lot of casinos in what they call Indian territories. And then lately they've been taking over all of those entities because they come under the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Sovereign what? We fall for it. You know, if you don't have a knowledge of the real history, you fall for anything. And we've been falling for it. I'm not saying that we haven't been called Indians. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's a fraud. And you know it is. You know in your heart it is anyway. It's just that the people keep looking for a benefit and they grab to anything that Rome promises them something. What it actually promotes is divisions among us. It's called divide and conquer. It's called schismata. And it's been working quite well for them to our injury.
So Wellness by Intention asked that I ask you to speak on the application of what you speak, what that has on the Bay Islands and the native Bay Islanders, and what Empress Earthy accomplished by her nationalization.
Same thing. What it does, it creates what you will call, it creates an interruption of the U.S. Treasury bonds, which actually belong to the Popes of Rome, etc., which has much to do with the reason why they assassinated her in the hospitals.
But
because remember, overall, it's the consciousness of the people in relationship to their right of claim that begins to kill the bond system, which is the bondage. The bondage is the systems of bottomry instruments that they've created for human trafficking that has been sold as U.S. Treasury bonds from 55 Water Street for these last century. Once you become conscious and you start speaking up publicly and making right of claim, it kills the bonds. You can't capture it, you must choke it. See, you know what they say? The trust and of the United States is what those bonds are built on. When the people lose faith and trust in those instruments, the instruments have no political negotiable power anymore, which is what's happening today in the political realm.
We have a spy fly in here.
Yes.
You can't get him.
Poor fly.
No, he can't.
Just move out the way, guy.
If you see my hand coming through,
we don't want to. We don't remove him from this plane.
I do.
Let him.
I'll open the door for him. He won't go out.
But anyway, cognizance of what's going on has, because keep in mind, what keeps the vampires' power is you projecting them energy. And a lot of these conversations we have is to get you to willingly stop giving faith to these platforms created by Rome that are in place not to serve you, but to make you their serfs, i.e. connotatively make you their slaves. And it's the fact that we keep on serving and believing in them, having faith in them, that gives them strength. And then also projecting fears of going against that those frauds, which also they feed on. They feed on fear and ignorance. They are parasites. They are vampires. They are exploiters. You must comprehend that that's what's going on here. See, the deal of it is, our people have been groomed in this oppression for so many generations that they actually have been serving the purpose of the vampire operatives by what? By fearing or thinking that someone else outside of themselves must save them. No, it's you. Know yourself.
I heard something very interesting the sister was talking about. And she was talking about the fact that we are batteries, so to speak, their energy. We are energetic batteries. And that one of the reasons, and I found this very intriguing, one of the reasons why they work so hard to put so many of our brothers and sisters in their industrial, camps, their prison industrial system.
Distracted.
Not just
feed off of you.
Because when you put that much tension, anger, fear, frustration in those places, and it happens like that, that's just a mega battery energy source that they draw off like the Lucius.
This is also why,
besides the fact that they use it for cheap labor,
set up what you call zones.
Right. So they're drawing off of the energies.
Isn't that ethereal vampirism?
Yes.
Isn't Roe versus Wade was originally set forth, i.e. to support, i.e. the principles that are promoted by Margaret Sanger and the genocide program, and for what? A blood source and an organ source and what they will call a meat hamburger source in the name of women's rights. Now that's a fact. But look how many women support Roe versus Wade with the child sacrifice or murder of children guised as women's right of abortion for their bodies so they can keep partying.
Yeah, but
now, that's a fact.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
which means we've been supporting it, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And then calling it something else, haven't we? Because we've been participating in the frauds, haven't we? Well,
yeah, but I mean, the point I was trying to make is that how many prisons there are all around, and that
POW camps,
but that they're actually literally being used as an energy source to these
Yes,
I want to call them energy vampires or whatever they are.
No,
it's no different than when you get that. The reason why they're getting them back together in the arenas, like the football stadiums and the basketball, baseball, the loosh, but loosh on a regular basis comes from prisons because it's so much energy.
It empowers the vampires.
Yeah.
Now, all right. So those prisons, the same people who've been claiming to be judges have stock in those prisons.
Absolutely.
Which is why they get the youth, because they get them early. Now the deal is,
and they've used the music industry.
Isn't it back to jurisdictional issues? Isn't it back to lack of courts of diversity, which is established law? But that they're able to do these things?
But the fact of the matter is, they also use some of the big time rappers or rap producers of the 90s. They did, starting in the 90s, to begin to change.
Aren't they willing wards of the state?
Right. They changed the tone and direction for the specific purpose of drawing young people, young men specifically, in through the pipeline.
Isn't that back to General Education Board, where John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates, that they would mold these people into their service by teaching them improper concepts as proper? Why do you think they have a lot of people among our own who worked for the Board of Education will never contradict them, because they made their livings helping the hybrid Europeans deduce our people's will to use their own common sense and intelligence?
I don't think many of them have even read that mission. Look, I'm talking about our people. I know. Well, I wouldn't think anyone who.
You know what we got to do? Stop excusing them.
They probably are not handing that to them.
I'll say this to you.
We're sending you into here because we don't want you to teach them anything for real.
I'll say this to you. As long as we keep excusing them, we continue the frauds. This is another reason we're in here. We're in this position.
I'm not negating research. I'm saying I'm pretty sure they're not putting in front of their face something that's telling them flat out. I mean, it's probably
not, because they get paid, as they call it, by them. They have in their history teaching, quote unquote, thousands of our children the curriculum that they were locked into, and they do it with pride, arrogant pride. They're criminal thieves, and they're part of the vampire system. If you study many of these people, they have, the reason why many of them use those two platforms is because they have limited to no other skills or contributions to society. And so they justify taking these types of jobs to help destroy their own people in the name of helping your people, and then try to play innocent. But they can be very sticklers when it comes to small concepts about using different words. They're expert with that, but they never read those words of the philosophy. Why don't they read the philosophy page when they start sending their children out there? We ain't talking about the parents who ignorantly send their children to these institutions. We're talking about them teachers who get paid by the Board of Education, that know the philosophy page, and then hypocritically talk about they care about the children when they're knowingly part of the problem.
Well,
they justify themselves because they get a paycheck.
The latest agenda that's out with all of these mandates of teaching children about gender equality and sex, that same-sex stuff in the school.
Margaret Sanger operations, and it's also the dark side. Here we go. Higher self, lower self. What is one of the things that the hybrid parasite colonists have been doing under colonial operations? Part of the genocide is to what? Always attack the feminine principle, to reduce the feminine principle, which is the gateway to life in the physical plane, and to neutralize the womb, which is why they create what you call false matrices. Matrix means womb, i.e., and the paradigm of parentis patre parentis, where they claim to be your mother or father, distinguished from your real mother or father, and therefore claim to have right to your life, your physicality, and in the process send out the priesthood to claim your soul. They say saving souls. No, they're claiming souls for the popes of Rome. The two instrumentalities or the two major platforms by which that is executed is called the Circle Church and Chancery, i.e., the British Accredited Registry, i.e., the Bar Associations of Britain and Bar Association of America, and the so-called attorneys, lawyers who are Sadducees and Pharisees, and persons among our own who have been working with them, who have continued to exploit our people in the name of civil procedures to really rob their birthright, rob their substance, rob their estates in the name of processing them through the quote-unquote system, as opposed to fundamental, elemental, common sense, i.e. constitutional principles, which is why they're against Constitution. They'll always say, no draw leave on the prophet. They'll always say, that Constitution don't apply to us. 9 times out of 10, start doing some research on them and you'll see that they are actually working with the Bar Association. And their buddies, other buddies who are working with the Board of Education, they make good partners. Those are the two platforms, that the major platforms and the dogma platforms of the church that have corrupted religion. Those are the operations. Bar Association, Board of Education, and the religious orders, i.e., missionary, mercenary, military, the 3 M's. And they have been quite successful at it, which is why we've been using the different strategies of chess moves of people doing writs, declaring their nationality, making allodial claims on their property, etc., declaring their right of their labor, etc., and challenging the Inquisition revenue services, i.e., falsely called the Internal Revenue Services or the IRS, which are really strong arm collection agencies for the popes of Rome, the Circle Church and Chancery, and the fake Queen of England, etc., guising themselves as government and supported by persons who are really board of directors who have been claiming falsely to be congressmen and senators, etc., when their platform was dissolved in 1861. That's a fact. And for those who need a little bit more information, look up the Organic Act of Congress of February 2nd, 1871. And we've been telling you this stuff redundantly so that you yourself can become cognate in your consciousness of rejecting faith and credit of the United States Corporation Company, which is really a human trafficking platform and not a legitimate national government. It is a governing body of thieves, criminals, and vampires and baby killers.
Here's a question from Reese Marcy Ladon. Knowing that the general populace is under maritime law for centuries, how can American law, the law of the land, nature's law, be enforced without raising flags of conflict with them?
Why shouldn't you raise flags in conflict? That's the law of the land. Well, you want to play punk? That's why we don't have the rights. We keep on trying to dance around the issue or keep on excusing things. But yet these same people will quickly go to wars in other lands to maintain this maritime law that they're complaining about as soon as they're out of a job for 3 weeks. Now tell me that's hasn't been the pattern. They'll sit around and boast about. I know many of you seen this movie. What's it called? Red Tails or something like that. What's that movie? With the so-called Negroite airplane pilots that won the war for these hybrids.
The red.
They boast about that, You always fighting those wars against your own people, and then come back to the servitude that you're helping them deny your brothers and sisters around the world. And you want to ask, how can you get back? What you can do is stop supporting Rome's platforms and stop playing nigger. That's what you can do. Start taking responsibility and reject Rome, which we've been telling you redundantly, and get the parasites from among you who work for the Bar Association and the Board of Education, because all they're teaching you is how to jump through hoops while raping you economically, because they're too lazy to produce anything else.
And you can't, let's not leave out
that's the truth.
The ecclesiastical side of that.
Well, that's all of them.
In particular,
I told you, the Bar Association, Board of Education, and the dogmatic religious platforms are the three operatives that are the tools that enslave humanity.
Right.
That's the truth. If you do some examination, you'll see it for yourself, which is why now we're just simply talking about the judicial platform at the moment, i.e. with American law. So you can have a comprehension between natural law, upon which jurisprudence is built, and the ens legis operations under de facto operations, which is actually what we've been forced to live under maritime law of piracy, booty and prize of the seas brought on land. So they'll call it the Holy See. So the Holy See is SEE, where the Pope, the false Pope of Rome, takes on the eye of Horus and pretends himself to be God, which is demonstrated in the book of Thessalonians 1 and 2. So go read that Bible that was altered with over 700 books being removed, but it's still enough to wake you up a little bit. And look at the book of Thessalonians 1 and 2, and you'll see the one who put themselves on the throne claiming to be God, government, ordinance departments. So when they're saying God, they don't mean what you mean when you say God. You better know that's the truth. But once you get conscious of what's really going on, you yourself in your mental mind will start rejecting Rome. At that point, they start losing power, because it most certainly is ethereal and spiritual first before they can manifest it in the physical world. It is upon you to start rejecting Rome, or render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, like you've been claiming for generations and really not doing. You've just been repeating it like puppets with fakery in your hearts.
Fear.
Fear is part of fakery. False education appearing real.
False evidence or expectations.
False education, Board of Education appearing real. It's called animal husbandry training.
But fear is always with regard to something that is expected to happen. So it's false expectation appearing real. And so when you stand on your square, as we've been told, you said it and all others have been teaching it, without fear and without trepidation, that's how you fight them. But because the energy of fear is going forth and giving them power.
Let's look at this, Dr. Naila. This is where, over the years, I've always challenged people. They always say they fear Jesus, God, Allah. I fear no one but Allah.
But that's an issue too.
Jesus. I fear no one but God. And then their actions show that they fear Rome. And Rome knows that.
How about Rome is God?
Well, it is. Rome is the God of this world. It's called Satan.
Right.
Or Shaitan. So all of their legislation deals with the dark side. Do they know the truth? Yes, they will not uphold the truth. When he speaketh of a lie, he speaketh of his own kind. But yet he pretends to be the real Jew, doesn't he? Don't act like they don't see the book of Mark, that they've been promoting. Oh, we love the book of the Bible. Then look at what is exposed in there. Your problem is among those fakers who've been trying to kill you off and claiming your identity. We told you earlier, everything they do is in projection or in someone else's name. Keep in mind, for those of you who remember your little school book stories, the Boston Tea Party, and look at the hybrids put on what they call blackface. That's where that tradition comes from, even in the Mummers Parade at Philadelphia, where they took the birthright. and then threw the T over the side and said the Indians did it. And they do it to the very day. They go in one nation, poison water, kill people, and say somebody else did it. The same way
apologize for this
that when they did it during the Second World War, i.e., the members of the Circle Church in Chancery with the United States Corporation Company went into what they call the Middle East. Well, where's the Middle East? Then where's the West East? And where's the East East?
In the Southeast.
Oh, yeah, in the Southeast or the Northeast. Yeah, right. And then they divided up Persia into Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, etc. And they've been battling in that area ever since. And they've been doing things in other people's names. And then they created this fake state over there. And it's been war ever since. And they've been doing it in other people's names. They haven't even changed the playbook. And don't act like you don't know what's going on. Our people, because they fear Rome, not Allah. They don't fear Allah. They don't fear the ancient ones. They fear Rome. So they react to what? Well, they won't give you an ID. And we need to be recognized by them. Like they don't know who you are. Like they don't know they're colonists. Like they don't know they're not Americans. And you pretend that you don't know those facts. We need to be recognized by them. And then we're going to organize in such a manner to get them to get an ID. You're full of crap. You brave, these brave men with no testicles. This is why the truth going to come from babes. Like the prophet said, the day is going to come when people are going to come in this movement with their eyes wide open and enforce my law. That's what's happening today. That's why all them bond systems are dying. Yeah, all these punks that keep on making excuses. Well, yeah. You know God, devils, and when raptures, you know all this stuff? You don't know the fundamental rules that's been operating on this planet? You tell that crap to somebody else. You need to get rid of these parasites among your own that belong to the Bar Association and to the Board of Education who have actually been secretly helping these hybrid Romans. Screw you. And stop making excuses for them. Because they're your cousins and buddies. They have produced nothing in your communities. But they're always trying to get a few hundred from you, ain't they? Don't act like you ain't been participating in this BS. Because you have. Stop. Take the vampire's straw out your neck and they'll die by nature. Because they live off your energy.
Stop giving them the straw.
Yes. Stop consenting to the BS. And act like you, I didn't understand this BS. It stunk, didn't it?
Here's a question. Anime says, ask Grand Sheik for help, I guess, with explaining the ringing, I guess, in the head. I guess if people are experiencing ringing, or if that person is ringing in the head.
Hold on, because let's talk about reality. They're using microwave technology for mind control purposes. They've been using graphene in those jabs they've been putting in people, because you are actually, they're making these people into what you call transducers for themselves so that they can bend you, etc. So with your cognates, I would suggest you start meditating and doing some cleansing and dealing with some holistic doctors, etc. People who are closer to the earth, to start cleansing yourself.
I saw something that somebody sent me, and they were saying that these doctors, I think it was Dr. Christine Northrup, and somebody went through the airport with a fake, V letter, right? Mm-hmm. Certification, a card. And they said to them that they knew the card was fake because we could track whether or not you actually had it. So when you go through the card doesn't mean anything, especially when
because
they're picking up.
Because they're magnetized. There's graphene in it, which
Yeah.
we told you all earlier, which is what they can send a signal, just like you know how like you put that strip on the cards. You know how they put the strips on the cards, and they have information on it.
Yeah.
Well, now you're the walking information. You've just been what you would call impregnated with graphene, which makes you a transmitter. And when you go through the airport, the card don't mean anything because you will light up like a neon sign on their graphene machinery, AI toolery. We keep telling people, but the people keep believing in them, don't they? They keep submitting to them, don't they? Don't they?
Yeah.
Instead of fighting for the restoration of their right of estate, they keep on trying to find methodologies within Rome's system to deal with Rome. You must reject Rome. You can't serve two masters. Make up your mind.
I'm no movement. I don't know what that word is. I'm not gonna read that one.
Everything they keep doing, they keep showing you that they are not your government. They keep doing things to injure you. Since when are they? They're not serving you. They're serving themselves to your injury. A child could figure that out. As a matter of fact, probably ants and stuff can figure that out. Ants know when something's trying to hurt them. You go messing with a beehive, they have warriors. They already smell when what? A threat is there. What happened to your humanity? Your sense of self-defense?
Here's Cindy Davies Darby says, how's the IRS setting directives to put into law monitoring our transactions in our bank accounts?
Under unum sanctum operations, is not your bank account. The account belongs to the bank, not to you. These are fundamental principles that people who in the name of leadership should have already told you because they already know that. All of these people are banks who are bankers, including the de facto human trafficking venues that they've been calling courts are not courts. They are bank. And the people who have been falsely claimed to be judges are really administrative clerks, and they work for the bank. And when you transfer anything to them, they have what is known as a double ledger operation. Your assets that you think is your account becomes their assets, and then they draw off of those assets with what you call fractionalization. And this is why they claim to own everything, including you, and why at will they can garner the account that you think is yours, because it's not your damn account. And if you try to take anything out of that account that goes beyond a couple of hundred, they will treat you like you walked in that building to rob them, and you still think that that's your account. You need to grow up, start studying the principles of banking, and comprehend that they're neither constitutional nor lawful, but they are actually a criminal operation, etc. This is the reason why they can regulate and control and garnish and corrupt and rob and deduce the value of those accounts, because those accounts belong to them, not to you. But you insist on continuing to deal with them and therefore making yourself subject.
I went to the bank today and had to sit down because I wanted to do a wire transfer, a large sum that I wanted to ask. And so I spoke to a melanated, I wouldn't call him a more than he's woke, but I've been speaking to the brother for the last couple of years at the side. And I asked him, had they been required to do that? And he said, the minute they tell him that they have to do that, he'll be out, because he's not doing that. But I asked him about whether or not it was true about the $600, because people are saying $600 or more. So he told me, he says, well, no, he said, of course, he said, if you're going to do like millions, of course we have to do, he said, but the only thing, this is interesting, the only thing we might have to make note of is if it's going for crypto currency, or it was crypto and something else.
Anything that takes it out of their control or venue.
This is what he told me today. So I said, oh no, this is for educational purposes, right? But it's very interesting. You know, he said the government's monitoring crypto.
The fact of the matter is, let's look at this, Dr. Naila. If it's your account, why did they have any questions whatsoever?
Absolutely.
Did they question you through
when
all
I put
that
it in?
When you put it in?
They absolutely did not.
Oh, and why you got to dance through a hoop to get it out? Because the real deal is they know that once you give it to them, the account that they've been falsely presenting as being your account is really the other side of the double ledger or double books that they keep of assets on their own book, which is why you'll see all of these cities where people have mortgages, not a allodial title. The banks own all of the houses through the municipalities. And when they tax or they go after people's houses, you'll see that it's the bank and the municipalities and city operators together that sue the people or take their property for lack of payment of tax that never really applied to them in the first place.
And now, you know, I do want to add, you know, me having been director of housing for, you know, before I retired, one of the things that people don't realize, particularly if they have, quote unquote, at least thought they owned their home, but they ended up, like a lot of seniors, it happens, now they can't pay their taxes and the taxes that have been imposed on, not their taxes, and they get their home foreclosed for taxes. What they don't realize is that the value of the house, the difference between the value of the property and the actual taxes owed is their funds too. If
the
they never
alleged taxes,
the alleged, well, I'm just saying the alleged taxes and the value, if you will, what they have in equity, what was in equity in that home, the difference between that belongs to, if they never get the house back, at least those funds belong to them, and they don't know that they can go back, and they won't tell them unless you go back knowing I'm owed the difference. Otherwise, after 5 years or 2 to 5 years, it goes into the unclaimed funds.
Now, while that is true, Dr. Naila, why is no one talking about claiming the right of the property in the first place, as opposed to the residuals of a de facto sale of an estate that didn't belong to them to sell in the first place?
I get that.
Hold on.
I get that.
And that these people are de facto, as well as the property was pledged with Franklin Delano Roosevelt to back their private debt. And then you go back to Woodrow Wilson, etc., where they started claiming the properties to back their debt, i.e., and classifying people's private property out of a allodial venue and into mortgages and deeds that created the artificial debt, which made this issue in the first place, and then misclassified private property as commercial property taxable in a foreign port, which is a fraud and a lie. And no one questioned that.
Yeah, because
why don't these so-called black leaders, grand sheiks, and other people who were put in power themselves to make law and to enforce law, lie on the prophet and say the prophet didn't teach civics, and then they don't enforce the Constitution and those principles and allow this corruption to go on with the misclassification of the people, etc., and then the loss of their estates and their labor, etc., knowing it's a fraud.
I get all that, but what I'm trying to say is there are people who have walked away saying, throwing their hands up.
They weren't informed, even with
but
that.
Within time periods, they still might be able to go back and claim, because they're the cause and the cure. So then they spawn other businesses off of the causes that they have, that they reach.
What?
And then
there's exploitation of the people.
There's businesses that actually will go back, research these unclaimed funds, and then find the people who walked away from their domiciles thinking, well, I lost it. They'll find it and then get a fee of anywhere from XY to 40% to get you the funds that you should have been told were yours anyway.
Exploiting false platforms,
but they can do it themselves.
Injury on the people.
Because there's somebody somebody's gonna hear this and has had just this thing happen to them.
Yes. Now, and this is back to the point that I've been making, Dr. Naira. Even with one of the reasons I said I'm presenting some of this. It is from the very beginning that instead of telling the people the truth of what happened, to get the people to stop feeding into the situation, they do what? They find these places of revenue streams for themselves in the false issue and the fraud that had been put upon the people, etc., acting like they're helping the people when they are what? Extending the administration of the problem under the guise of, quote unquote, teaching law, when they're really working for the Bar Association and they themselves are continuing to exploit their own people.
Here's a question. Please ask Taj.
However, this is another point that I'm making. Our people need to comprehend that they need to stop trusting these people who claim to be government and understand that all these governments have been corrupted and compromised, and so have their so-called assistants to the lawyers who have been put among them in the name of helping them, who they themselves are exploiting the injuries of our people, making a revenue stream for themselves, rather than attacking the frauds themselves and the platforms upon which the frauds are built. They get on the bandwagon of these fake cure, semi-cure remedies, etc. Well, we're going to take you through this process. Yeah, right. A birthright needs no process, it needs a claim.
Well, questions, there's quite a few questions and comments.
We need to get rid of these parasites.
Okay. Is there any international money that knows?
Yeah, you don't have what you call reach into some of these hybrids who are hiding in tunnels under the ground, but you certainly have access to the people that are coming around you in the name of black leader guys and tribal daggone craps, Indian tribe craps to rape your people, continuing this BS that's been going on and exploiting our people. How about undoing the foundation of this crap? That's what you should be focusing on. Let's get to the root of the problem.
Question is, could you elaborate on the type of government systems Morocco were operating on?
All of these government systems have been operating on piracy or admiralty law, knowingly and deliberately moving the people away from common sense and common law, which is the law of the land. For law itself means land, air, and water. And you know that the constitutional principles that govern people's properties, their estates, etc., is the law of the land, sometimes referred to as the supreme law of the land, i.e., which is the Constitution and the treaties, etc., which is why they don't teach civics or common law to the common people, etc., i.e., the principles of government and American law, because they don't want you to go there, because you will immediately recognize that these people who've been around you in the name of black leader guys are actually minions, and they have handlers behind them who are really members of the Circle Church and Chancery, i.e. the Bar Association and the Board of Education, whose really job is to help exploit you themselves while pretending to be fixing the so-called problem. They're vampires too. This is why most of them don't like Taji guy, because I don't play with them. Damn sellouts.
Someone was asking what if you explain what the what the philosophy page is for the Board of Education and where to find it. You can.
Let's do this.
But they can
because we've
Google that.
This.
It's on.
It only took a minute. Because we've been sharing with you all tonight and references made to that, keep in mind, we want you to have a clear comprehension of what we're talking about, and that much of what got us in the condition that we're in now has been really our concepts that we have received in the name of education, and why many people who have vetted among you to so-called educate you, etc., are really got their backing from the Board of Education and made their living to help keep you dumbed down, etc., i.e. with their curriculum that actually comes from John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates with the 1902 General Education Board, which is available to all of you to read. However, for your edification, I will read it right now to you all. It's only an extended one-piece paragraph, and this is all the schools and education systems, etc., operating in the Western Hemisphere, whether you're talking about Canada or the U.S. corporation, etc., their jurisdictions. This is their operation and their philosophy. This should tell you much. So anyone who's been teaching your children, they'll pretend they don't know this, and you'll never hear them mention this because they were getting their quote-unquote paycheck and experience of teaching thousands of children. Yeah, right. Helping the Romans mess your babies up. This is direct philosophy page of all the members of the Board of Education. In our dreams, we have limitless resources, and the people yield themselves with perfect docility to our molding hands. The present education conventions fade from their minds, and unhampered by tradition, we work our own goodwill upon a grateful and responsive rural folk. We shall not try to make these people or any of their children into philosophers or men of learning or men of science. We have not to raise up from among them authors, editors, poets, or men of letters. We shall not search for embryo, great artists, painters, musicians, nor lawyers, doctors, preachers, politicians, statesmen, of whom we have an ample supply. The task we set before ourselves is a very simple as well as a very beautiful one. To train these people as we find them to a perfectly ideal life just where they are. So we will organize our children and teach them to do in a perfect way the things their fathers and mothers are doing in an imperfect way, in the homes, in the shops, and on the farm. Education Board, General Education Board, Occasional Papers #1. That's called Animal Husbandry, that they've been training your children, our children, and ourselves in all of these education systems, from the college to kindergarten, etc. And with the